Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing, and I am here with another weekly wrap up. And I got loads of books read this week, mostly for the Irish Readathon. I'm going to hop in now and just tell you everything that I read. So the first book I read, I finished last week. I think I briefly mentioned last week, I actually can't remember, and that was Big Girl Small Town by Michelle Gallen. This is a book that is, as you can see up here, described as Milkman meets Derry Girls, and that is definitely a really good, accurate description of this book. So this is about a girl called Magella who lives in kind of a border town between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and this is set, I think it's set around like the noughties, not too far from our time, but she definitely like grew up when she was younger. She was growing up in the Troubles. Her dad seemed to have been somehow involved in the IRA, and her dad's family seemed to be involved in the IRA in some sense. But her father also disappeared when she was younger, and no one ever figured out what had happened to him, whether like he left of his own volition, whether he was murdered and his body was never found. They never really know what happened to her dad. He just completely disappeared one day, and ever since then she has kind of been looking after her mother. And in this book she is 27 years old, and basically her life is that she gets up, she normally gets up like in the middle of the day, quite late in the day, because she works in a chipper, and she goes to her chipper job and she works there, and there's all the locals that come in, and people come in every day for their fish supper and things like that. And then when she gets home, she eats her free fish and chips that she gets in the chipper. She goes to bed. She normally maybe watches an episode of Dallas, which she really enjoys, and then in the morning she looks after her mother, who is an alcoholic. And that is kind of how her life goes. It's very kind of run-of-the-mill. There's not much change in it. Once a week she goes to the pub and has a few drinks. Her life has kind of shaken up a little bit because her granny was attacked, and her granny actually died from the attack, from the injuries she sustained in that attack. And she's getting a lot of people talk to her about the attack and how it's terrible that it happened, and she's kind of still trying to deal with her emotions because of that. Like, we follow her just shortly after her granny has been buried and the funeral, and this book follows a week in Magella's life. So each chapter is one day, and we're just kind of getting all her thoughts and what she thinks about the people that she lives, like the town that she lives in, the people that she lives in. She's very matter of fact. It's quite obvious in this book that Magella is somewhere on the autism spectrum. She has a list of things she likes, she has a list of things that she doesn't like, and the way she thinks is very matter of fact. It's quite black and white in some senses. She doesn't really understand a lot of faffing about that people do, and you know, she kind of portrays that in her narration. We kind of see her thought process behind some decisions that people make and some things that people says, and it's actually really interesting to see how she thinks of these things. It took me a while to get used to the kind of the narration style in this book, and everything is kind of told through the way they speak. So the dialect in the book, the way the book is written, is kind of how people sound, and that can be a little bit jarring at first, especially if it's not something that you hear every day. And I'd be used to enough to the Northern Irish accent, but I still had to train my eyes to read it for a few chapters. So I'm sure if people outside of Ireland are reading this, they could find it difficult at first, but it took me a little bit, but soon I fell into the book really easily, and I soon really enjoyed just seeing what Magella thought of everything. And I just think the character progression we see in her from start to finish, from how she is at the very start and some decisions she makes at the very end, and just the little things that she does for herself throughout the book. And I just think it's really, it just showed a lot of, I feel like there was a lot of character development within the week of Magella's life, and I just really enjoyed following her story and just what it was like in some senses to live in this like border town, and the kind of the memory of the Troubles. And there is still a lot of that there, and yeah, and they're still very much living in the shadow of the Troubles. So I really enjoyed this in the end. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The one thing I will say is, because Magella lived in a chipper, I really wanted chips. I was like craving a chipper all week, and I haven't gotten yet because I'm kind of trying to avoid like takeout food and stuff, especially with the coronavirus and the lockdown and stuff like that. So I'm trying to not order out, but I think once it lifts I'll probably get a chipper chips, because yeah, this really made me crave like a salty vinegary chipper chips. So yeah, I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it, especially for people who like Derry Girls, who like the humour of Derry Girls, the crassness, the vulgarity. This is a book that has a lot of crude humour in it, and vulgar language, and yeah, so if you don't like that kind of language, don't pick this book up, but if you're okay with that, then this is perfect. Next book I read after that was In the Woods by Tana. This is a well-known thriller, kind of detective, not really a thriller series, it's more like a detective crime mystery series, and in this we are following the Dublin Murder Squad, which is a made-up division of like the Dublin police, so the Dublin Gardaí, and we are following one character in this. His name is Rob Ryan, and when he was younger, 2 of his friends disappeared, and he was with them when they disappeared, and he was found hours later like kind of covered in blood on his own, and he was never able to remember exactly what happened to his friends, and he's kind of still dealt with that trauma for the rest of his life, and he can't remember anything like around what happened. He's never been able to remember. And then we follow him from the start with him and his partner Cassie. They get called out to a murder in the area he grew up in, investigating this murder, which is to do with a 12-year-old child, and they start trying to figure out if there is a connection between this murder and the disappearance 20 years ago of Rob's two friends, and is there a link there, and what could that happen. And it kind of dredges up a lot of different things in Rob's life. He is kind of starting to lose his grip on just day-to-day life and kind of keeping himself together while dealing with a lot of trauma from his past, while also trying to uncover the murder of this child. I did really enjoy this. I thought this was really, really well written. I thought that the detective work, it took like time. It was like a good like long slog. It wasn't something that was solved really, really quickly, which I enjoyed. I like books that have a realistic portrayal of what police work is like and kind of the day-to-day aspect of it and the paperwork and stuff like that, and the delays that can happen with real police work. I liked that was in this book. It took me a while to warm to Rob as the main character. I thought he was a little bit of a douche. I wasn't really sure if like he was actually a nice guy, and then we got to know him a little bit more. I think there were things that happened between him and his partner Cassie that were like done, I think, just to, I don't know, throw kind of some things into the work and things to like complicate them, and I don't think it really needed to be there, and it kind of annoyed me. And I just thought that it was just really annoying when things happened between them just for the drama of it all, and that just irritated me, and I didn't really like that so much. I did really enjoy the murder investigation. I was definitely kind of hopping back and forth between what could happen, and I just thought the end of it, the way it would all solved out, and I just thought that was really, really good. I really enjoyed that. I will say I was kind of disappointed in the end because I feel like I didn't get all the answers I wanted from the questions I had throughout the book, and I actually thought the series would follow the same detective throughout, but it actually doesn't. I don't think Rob, I'm not sure if he shows up again in the next book. The second book does follow his partner Cassie and stuff that she's doing, but I'm not sure if Rob like properly shows up in the rest of the books. And yeah, I was kind of disappointed by that because I'd kind of grown to like him then, and I also felt like I didn't have all the answers I wanted to do with his own story. So yeah, when it ended and I realised that I probably wasn't going to get those answers, I felt a little bit cheated. So yeah, that was a little bit irritating, but overall I did really enjoy the story. I think the writing was really, really good, and the murder investigation was done really, really well, so I quite enjoyed it. And I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I picked up was An Encounter with the Number 12 by Janet O'Leary. This is a middle grade novel about a little boy called Patter. He is about 12 years old, and his pet goat Billy Bond end up going on this adventure to Fairyland to rescue Patter's parents, who he always thought that they were dead, but it turns out they are not dead, but they were actually kidnapped by a really evil magician called Duodecimus. And he now, because he's the right age, he is now able to travel into Fairyland and try and defeat Duodecimus to get his parents back. And he ends up doing this, and he goes through like all these little adventures and meets all these different characters in Fairyland while he tries to save his parents. This was a really cute book. It was really well written, especially for a self-published book. I think it was done really well. You could see like there was a lot of like focus and attention to detail put into this book, and in terms of editing and stuff I didn't see any errors, which sometimes happens with self-published book. I thought this was just really well put together. I thought the character Patter was really cute. I think this is a really great book for middle grade readers. I think there's a lot of really great messages in here about kindness and selflessness and good versus evil and things like that you kind of see a lot in middle grade books, but I think it was done really well in here, and the message was, you know, very, very clear. I thought there were some characters in this that popped up that will probably appear in maybe later novels in this world, because I feel like there's a lot more to explore in this world. I really like some characters in it that reminded me of other characters in other middle grade books, such as Mr. Tumnus in Narnia and like Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings, which isn't a middle grade but is, you know, there was characters in it that just kind of reminded me weirdly of him. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this. I think there were times where the narration of the story, it just felt very formal, and I felt like I feel like if it had been a little bit more of a relaxed tone, seemed very formal sometimes, and the tone could be a little bit more relaxed, especially for younger readers. But overall, I think this was a very good book, and I did quite enjoy it. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars overall, and I do recommend it for middle grade readers. An audiobook this week that wasn't for the Irish Readathon. It was one that I had a reserve on from the library, and I wasn't due to get for another couple of months. And then because of the coronavirus and self-isolation, the Irish library system, they did a really great job. They set up a way for people to just become a member online, so they could use the online system and the online app, and for people who are stuck at home who might not be a member of the library previously, so they wouldn't have to go into the library, and then everything could be set up online. And then I think they set it up so there was less waiting time for titles, so I ended up getting a few titles in that I had kind of been okay to wait for a while, that I had reserved. So I ended up getting the audiobook for Greta Thunberg's series of speeches called No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference, and it's also narrated by Greta Thunberg herself, and I really enjoyed this one. It's only about 4 hours long, or even, I'm not sure if it's even 4 hours long. This was just a really interesting section of speeches to listen to, especially with what's going on in the world right now. I just felt, yeah, I was kind of wondering about like all the changes in the world right now and how it's actually probably having a positive effect on the environment, and I just thought it was kind of a weird coincidence. And Greta actually has a really like assuring tone of voice, and even though what she is saying is kind of scary sometimes and it's very urgent, what she is saying is very like the tone of her voice is very soothing. Listening to her voice is quite soothing. So at one point I was listening to this week before I fell asleep, and I actually ended up falling asleep, and I ended up having to like rewind and go back to the last few chapters to re-listen to some of the speeches because I had completely fallen asleep, and that never happens to me. And I think with everything going on this week, and obviously everyone's minds are racing, the fact that it was able to soothe me enough that I fell asleep listening to it, I think was actually a really good sign and a really positive sign for this book and how lovely it is to listen to. And yeah, there is some repetition in the speeches, but that would be expected because obviously the speeches weren't made to be compiled into a book. They are made to make a difference in the different events that Greta Thunberg has spoken at. This is a 5 out of 5 stars because why wouldn't you give this a 5 out of 5 stars? She's a 16-year-old girl who's literally taking on the world and calling people out and putting us all to shame and telling us that we need to make a difference because soon it's going to be too late. And I think she's just an amazing person and she's such an inspiration, and yeah, I had to give this 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book I read this week, I finished literally just this morning, and that was Queen of Coin and Whispers by Helen Corcoran. This is a book I've been really eager to read for quite a long time. It's shown up in a lot of TBRs that I've talked about, and I'm glad that I finally read this. So this is a YA fantasy about a woman called Aurelia who ends up becoming the queen. She is the heir to the throne, and then when her uncle dies, she becomes queen, and she ends up taking on this other girl called Xania to basically become her kind of like her spy master. The two of them, while they have kind of a knock heads meeting at first, they end up becoming very close, and obviously there is an attraction between them, and they start a romantic relationship while also trying to basically figure out how best to run a kingdom. And also Xania's job is obviously to keep Aurelia safe as well, or Leah as they call her, Leah safe as well. Xania as well, she kind of comes from a lower class of people than obviously Leah, because she is the queen, so she is also seeing some things from like a different perspective than Leah would, and they clash heads a lot. And then there's a lot of political intrigue of people trying to take over the throne from Leah, and her life is basically always in danger. She also has to try and figure out a marriage, because while in this world same-sex marriages and relationships are completely fine, a lot of people have them, she is the queen and she needs to give an heir to the throne, so she's actually supposed to probably marry a member of the opposite sex. She's supposed to marry a man so she can have a child. So there are some difficulties there and obstacles that they have to face. So I really enjoyed this one. There's a lot of things I really liked about it. I thought the world building was quite good. I thought it was really well written for starters. The world seemed very fully realised, and the neighbours and the pasts between them, the histories between them, trade, things like that, it seemed all very fully realised. This is an ARC copy, but I presume in the full copy there would be a map, because I think I would really have loved a map in this, but obviously this is an ARC copy, so that's why I wouldn't have one. I really hope the finished copy has a map though, because I think that would be really useful just to see where everyone is in relation to each other. One of the things I really loved about this book is that Aurelia, she obviously is heir to the throne. She's always known that she's going to be queen. So when she does become queen, there is no kind of like period where like she doesn't know what she's supposed to do, and she doesn't know the people in her court and who she should look out for and who she shouldn't, and who is her enemy but actually pretending to be her friend and things like that. She already knew everyone. She knew everything. She knew what she was supposed to do. And I feel like in a lot of YA fantasy in particular, when people become queen or suddenly become like royal in that sense, there's a lot of like they don't really know what they're doing, and I feel like in this one Leah knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly what it was expected of her, and it was just like a real breath of fresh air that she just knew what she was doing. She didn't feel like a princess struggling to rule her country. She felt like a queen. She was a queen. She was very regal throughout this book, and I feel like, and she was regal to the point at times I feel like we as a reader were actually almost, she shadowed from us a little bit. I feel like as a character I got to know Xania more and her feelings more than Leah, because I feel like Leah also, even when we were reading from her point of view, she still seemed stately in that way that we were almost a step back from her the whole time. I actually think I would have liked more from Leah's perspective than Xania's. I thought Xania was really interesting, but I think I was just more interested in Leah as a character, and I feel at times I lost a lot of like Leah's point of view because we were concentrating on Xania so much. The relationship between them two of them is really great. I really love the little moments between the two of them. They were just so cute. There was a lot of chemistry, there was some tension, there were some like funny moments, some funny embarrassing moments between the two of them that I just really enjoyed, and it's definitely a relationship that I can really root for and that I was just really happy to read along with. One of the issues I did have with this book is I feel like a lot of things happened off page when I would have liked to have read them happening. Xania, obviously, we first meet her, she becomes the spy master. Leah decides that she's going to be her new spy master, and they call that person the Whispers in this court. So she is the new Whispers, and I feel like we saw none of, well, obviously Leah became queen and she knew what she was supposed to do because that's what she's been training for her entire life. Xania didn't know she was going to become Whispers. She didn't have any training that this is what she was going to do, yet she just seemed to step into the role really easily, and we didn't see any of that like setup that she had to do or the difficulties she's faced in trying to figure out what she should do. Everything just seemed to come really easily to her, and she kind of seemed to know exactly what she was supposed to do, and I just felt like that was a little bit unbelievable, and I would have liked to have seen her properly figure out what she was supposed to do in terms of like getting agents and spies and all this kind of stuff. She just kind of tells us she did that like months down the line, and I was like, I would have liked to have seen that actually happen, and her trying to figure that out in the time, in the present, that she was like, no, I just kind of felt like kind of annoyed that I didn't get to see all of that. I would have really enjoyed to see that bit. And near the end of the book, a lot of things happen, and I feel like loads of things just felt like they were skipped over, and we kind of miss out on Leah's point of view for a lot of that time. And I think I would have liked Leah's point of view during that time period while all this stuff was happening. I can't say too much obviously, but I really miss Leah's point of view, and like 2 months went by in the space of like a few pages, and I was just like, okay, but like what, like I just felt like so much was missing, and I just felt like really like I just wanted, like, this book is quite long, but I feel like there could have been more, if you know what I mean. I feel like, yeah, it just felt like things were cut that shouldn't have been cut, and I felt like there was just so much things happening off page that I would have just liked to have seen. Also, near the end of the epilogue of this, I actually was really confused because I thought that this was a series, but it's actually not, or a trilogy. I think this is a standalone book. So when the epilogue happened and everything was kind of wrapped up, I was like, oh, okay, we're not getting another book from these characters. I thought that this was going to be a trilogy, and I feel like this could probably have been stretched out into a duology at least. And yeah, I kind of wish I kind of wish the last little bit of this book, there's something that happens to Leah, and I feel like the book could have ended with that, and we don't know what happened to her. We don't follow on from there. Like, something happens to her and then it ended, and then we could have got another book where those 2 months I said that sped by in the space of 2 pages, that could have been spread out into another book, and we would have seen another world, sorry, not another world, another country, another culture. It would have been like almost like a heist adventure for Xania in terms of trying to help Leah, and we didn't get any of that. So I think it's just a lost opportunity there, that I feel like there was a lot that could have been done that wasn't done, and there's so much off page. I just spat at the camera. There was so much off page that could have been on the page and could have been extended into another book. And this world is really intriguing and really interesting, and I feel like there's a lot more to do in this world. I feel like, you know, there's more countries, there's more royal families. And yeah, I'm just actually really sad that it's a standalone, because I feel like this could be a duology, or it could be a trilogy. So I'm presuming it's a standalone because I can't see how this follows on. I don't know, like, I don't really know. I'm just presuming it's a standalone by the way it ended, and I'm sad that it's a standalone because I actually would have really loved this to have been extended into more books. So yeah, so that is everything. Sorry, I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. So that's everything I read this week. Let me know what you guys have read, if you've enjoyed anything, what you've been reading while being self-isolated. I would love to know. If there are any videos you would like to see coming up from me in terms of people being stuck at home and maybe watching YouTube more, if there's any particular type of videos you would like, please let me know in the comments down below. I would be glad to film things that people actually want to watch. And that's about it for me today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time.